Congress is finally stepping in regards to the absurd amount of PPP fraud over the last year. And let me tell you, I am happy to not be either Cabbage or Bluevine right about now. What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and we are going to be talking about exactly that. We are going to be talking about the PPP fraud, which has been taking place over the last year. But there has been some really interesting and pretty alarming information that has come out over the last few days. And today we're going to talk about it. So let's get started. Now, it is no secret, and it is nothing new to the viewers of this channel, at least those of you who watch this channel regularly, that there is a ton of fraud with the PPP and the EIDL program. I've been making videos about this for a while now. In fact, I've kind of turned it into like a weekly series at this point where I break down the different types of fraud that has been taking place within these two programs. And I've broken down videos of people that took out loans through these programs and bought like a Lamborghini or a Bentley or a mansion, or took lavish vacations, or bought lavish jewelry and watches and so much more. I mean, the stories are truly endless. And at this point, there has been over 100 different individuals indicted on PPP fraud schemes. But over the last few days, there has been some new information that has been released in regards to these fraud cases, more specifically PPP fraud. You see, the difference between the PPP and the EIDL, at least when it comes to the execution of these programs, is the fact that with the EIDL, you had to apply through the SBA. You had to go to the SBA.gov's website. You had to apply through them. Any communication was done with a official SBA representative. And because of that, the EIDL program was quite honestly a mess. The SBA was not created to disperse funds in the volume in which the EIDL required, and as a result, a lot of people never got their money. A lot of people were simply skipped over, and whenever people did get their money, it typically came to them very late. But the thing about the EIDL is the fact that even though the program was very far from perfect, it was still controlled by the government and by the SBA, and because of that, whenever something did go wrong, it was either the SBA's fault or the borrower's fault. There was kind of no middleman to blame. The PPP was different though. The PPP was controlled by authorized and partnered lenders, things like Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, SBA lenders, and fintech lenders as well. You see, fintech stands for financial technology, and it is basically just businesses based in technology but are in the financial sector. Online banking institutions, for example, are considered fintech. And with the sense of urgency that the pandemic and the PPP and the EIDL brought, fintech institutions came out of the woodwork and started helping with the process of processing these loans. And there were many banks, most notably Bluevine and Cabbage, that came out and started processing these loans and really started advertising themselves and positioning themselves as a bank alternative. They advertised themselves as an option for people who wanted their PPP loan easier, more efficiently, and quicker. And as a result, they did just that. And they did this by going through the PPP application process, mostly using AI or artificial technology. As a result of this increased demand for banking institutions and fintech, both companies, Cabbage and Bluevine, grew exponentially in the last 12 months. In fact, Cabbage was acquired and Bluevine is slowly becoming a prominent name in the online banking space. In fact, I had never heard of Bluevine before the pandemic, and I ended up actually opening a business banking account with them, which I ultimately ended up closing a few months later because I didn't like it, but that's beyond the point. Because of the pandemic, there was a lot of people that had the door open into these online banking institutions, which was great for the banks. But now we have to talk about present day, and it looks as though things are not going quite as well for either Cabbage or Bluevine, because it was announced just a couple of days ago that Congress opened an investigation into both Cabbage and Bluevine because of the absurd amount of PPP fraud that came from both of these institutions. According to a report released by Congress and the Department of Justice, fintech leaders, specifically Cabbage and Bluevine, processed 15% of the PPP loans over the last year. So of all of the loans that were distributed for the PPP, Cabbage and Bluevine distributed 15% of those. Despite the fact that they gave out 15% of the total PPP loans, in this new report released by the Department of Justice, they are actually responsible and involved with over 75% of the fraudulent PPP loans that have been identified by the Department of Justice. Now, I would like to offer a bit of a disclaimer because according to the report released by the Department of Justice, they state that 15% of PPP loans had been distributed by fintech, and 75% of the fraudulent loans that had been identified by the Department of Justice had come from fintech. Now, it's unclear to me about whether fintech includes a lot of online banks, including things like Cash App or Lendio or Cabbage or Bluevine, or if they are talking specifically about Cabbage and Bluevine. So I'm not entirely sure if that statistic only involves these two banking institutions, or if they are using these two statistics to describe the umbrella fintech industry. So I would like to offer that disclaimer. It looks as though this investigation is specifically into Bluevine and Cabbage, but I am not 100% sure if Bluevine and Cabbage specifically are responsible and are involved in 75% of PPP loan fraud. Now, how these online banking institutions work, at least in regards to the PPP, is that you actually didn't get the money from these institutions. So for example, if you applied for the PPP through Cabbage and you were approved and you were distributed the money, Cabbage actually wasn't the one that gave you that money. They were just simply the one that facilitated it. Instead, you actually got that money from another banking institution. Cabbage is just simply the one that sent it. So there is a kind of lot to think about here, and there is potentially multiple parties to blame. But what Congress and what the Department of Justice is looking into is whether or not only Cabbage and Bluevine, but also their banking partners, if they had enough control over what was going on and if they could have done something differently to change the outcome of all of this fraud. Now, as of right now, it doesn't look as though there was like one single event that sparked this investigation. It looks as though it was just an accumulation of all of the fraud that had been happening. But I do have a theory that there was actually one event that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And this was an event that not only was investigated by the Department of Justice, but was also covered by about a dozen different news outlets online. Now, this was an investigation that was covered by a lot of different news articles, but the one that I'm referencing here is by the news outlet ProPublica. And the title of this article says, "Hundreds of PPP loans went to fake farms in absurd places. An online lending platform called Cabbage sent 378 pandemic loans worth $7 million to fake companies, mostly farms, with names like Dealy Nuts and Beefy King." And the article goes on to describe about the fact that there have been hundreds of different cases of people filling out PPP applications stating that they have a farm business and the type of livestock or agriculture that they have and their location that they're in simply do not match. For example, there's been a lot of cases of people in like Minnesota claiming that they have an orange farm, or people in Chicago, for example, that are raising livestock in like the center downtown Chicago, which for anybody that's gone to Chicago knows that that is not a thing. That's not possible. And if you live in downtown Chicago, you almost certainly do not have any cows in your possession. And yet there are so many different instances of applications saying these types of absurd things and actually getting approved funding, which begs the question of how is that possible? How is it possible for the PPP and for these lenders to not look at this application and say, you know what? This doesn't make sense. And the secondary question I have is, how arrogant are the people filling out these applications to be so blatant? I mean, for you to fill out a PPP application claiming to have an orange farm in the middle of Minnesota or claiming to be raising livestock in the middle of Chicago, I just am curious, like, what is the thought process going on from both parties? Like, how is Cabbage, how is Bluevine not fact checking this? And how are these people coming up with these crazy ideas? And why are they being so ridiculously blatant with it? You know, ultimately, there has been over 120 indictments for the PPP fraud schemes just across the United States. Not like these specifically I'm talking about today, but just general schemes. And I theorize that we are not anywhere close to the end of this fraud. I mean, we are going to continue hearing stories like this for years. And I think it will be interesting to see what happens with Cabbage and Bluevine specifically. And you know, it is unfortunate. I like both of these companies. I used Bluevine for a while as a customer. I was an advocate for both of these platforms during the pandemic and during the height of COVID relief. And it is unfortunate that there weren't more safeguards put into place to prevent these sorts of things from happening. But I am very curious to see how things end up playing out in the coming months. But like always, you guys, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.